Today's readings call us to reflect on God's love, mercy, and the sacredness of human life. In a world filled with technological advancements, we are often confronted with moral dilemmas that challenge our faith. One of the most emotionally charged topics today is in vitro fertilization, or IVF. We know that many couples struggle with infertility today, and their desire for children is natural, beautiful, and God-given. Some have turned to IVF out of desperation, seeking to fulfill their longing for a child. If that is you or someone you love, please hear this clearly. Your child is a gift from God, fully loved, fully cherished, and made in His image. Yet as Catholics, we must ask these three questions. What does God say about how human life should begin? Number two, why do Christians have concerns about IVF, even when it brings about new life? Number three, how can we affirm the dignity of children who have already been conceived through IVF while also teaching God's design for human life? To answer these questions, let us first turn to sacred scripture. In our first reading from 1 Samuel chapter 26, David has the chance to kill King Saul. But he refrains, saying, "Do not harm him, for who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and remain unpunished?" David recognizes that all human life is sacred, even the life of someone who was persecuting him. This passage reminds us that every human life belongs to God, from conception to natural death. This means that every child, including those conceived through IVF, is precious, sacred, and fully a child of God. The moral concern is not about the child, but about the process by which they were conceived. In our gospel reading from Luke chapter 6, Jesus commands us, "Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful." This is the heart of Catholic morality. We are to act with justice. But mercy must also be guided by truth. You can't have truth without mercy, and you can't have mercy without truth. True mercy does not allow us to act against God's plan, even when we are faced with suffering. Think of it this way. Imagine a child longing for a priceless gift. Let's say it's a rare, valuable heirloom from the family. However, instead of waiting to receive it from their parents, the child steals it from the cabinet when no one is looking. Number one, the gift itself is good. Two, the desire to have it is understandable. Three, but the way it was obtained was against the parents' will. This is kind of what happens with IVF. A child is a gift from God, not a right to be claimed by any means necessary. Number one, IVF creates life in a laboratory outside the loving embrace of a husband and wife. Two, it often involves the destruction of many embryos, treating human life as disposable. Number three, it replaces the natural act of marital love with a mechanical process. But let's be clear. Again, the problem, not the child. Every child, no matter how they were conceived, is a beloved creature of God. The dilemma for us as Christians today is how the child is conceived. The Church's teaching on IVF is a blend of truth and mercy. The Catholic Church clearly outlines its case concerning IVF. It violates the dignity of human life and the sanctity of marriage. However, the church also extends tremendous mercy to couples who have undergone IVF, recognizing their pain, their hope, and their love for their children. Let's look at a couple of concerns that we have as Christians today. Number one, IVF separates procreation from the marital act. God designs marriage and procreation to be united. Conception should happen through the self-giving love of husband and wife, not through a medical procedure. IVF treats conception as a technical process, reducing the creation of life to a scientific event rather than a sacred act. Number two, IVF often leads to the destruction of human life. IVF typically involves the creation of multiple embryos. Many are discarded, others frozen indefinitely, or still others used for medical and scientific research. But these embryos are human beings at the earliest stage of life, made in the image of God. The Catechism states, the human being must be respected as a person from the first moments of his or her existence. The Catholic Catechism of the Church, paragraph 2270. And number three, the church offers mercy to couples who have used IVF. If you have used IVF, know this: the church, as we heard in today's gospel reading, does not condemn you. God's mercy is infinite and always available. If you regret the decision, the sacrament of confession is always available for healing. If you have frozen embryos, consider options that honor their dignity, such as embryo adoption. If you did not know that IVF was wrong when you pursued it, God understands. He meets you where you are and wants to extend mercy to you. Pope St. John Paul II reminds us, a child is not something owed to one, but is a gift. The child possesses a right to be the fruit of the specific act of the conjugal embrace of his parents. The church's teaching is not a rejection of children conceived through IVF. It is a defense of human dignity and God's design for human life. Here are a few common questions regarding IVF in our modern age. Number one, but doesn't IVF bring new life? Isn't that good? Yes. The life created is good, but the process is what is questioned. We can never do what is against God's will to bring about good. Romans 3, verse 8. And number two, isn't it unfair to deny infertile couples a way to have children? Infertility is a deep cross, and Christians should have compassion for those who struggle. But not every desire is meant to be fulfilled by any means. Couples are encouraged to seek ethical fertility treatments, such as NAPRO technology, that respects God's design. If you don't know much about it, you can look it up. But basically, it's Christians throughout the last few decades creating a whole technology using science and medicine that is in line with God's design for humanity and is highly effective at achieving pregnancy. Number two, consider adoption, which reflects God's love for us, all of us, as his adopted children through Jesus Christ. Number three, offer their suffering as a spiritual sacrifice, uniting it to Christ. We know that suffering is a terrible thing in whatever form it comes to us, but we also know that it is in God's suffering that he comes near to us. And the other way around is equally true also. When we suffer, we can come near to him. And number 4, trust that there are many ways that they can faithfully and fruitfully share their love with children and raise them up to God in this world. As I conclude here, a few things to keep in mind and heart. For couples who have used IVF, be at peace. Your children are precious and fully loved. Seek God's mercy if needed. He is always ready to forgive. If you have frozen embryos, prayerfully consider ethical options for them. Number 2, for those struggling with infertility, look into ethical alternatives like NAPRO technology. Lean on the church for truth and mercy today, guidance and wisdom, while living in a world that is confused about many matters related to humanity. And number 3, for all of us, speak the truth with compassion, not judgment. Uphold the dignity of life from conception to natural death. Trust that God's plan is always better than human efforts that fall short of his will and ways. Trusting in God's mercy and his plan, God calls us to uphold the sanctity of life while also extending his boundless mercy. If you have a child from IVF, thank God for that child. He or she reflects the image of God and is loved beyond measure. If you have struggled with infertility, know that God has not abandoned you. He never has, and he never will. And if you have pursued IVF, God's mercy is always available to heal and guide you. Let us trust in God's plan, knowing that he alone is the author of life. And as we walk with him in this world, he will guide us as a providential father, leading us through the ups and downs of this world, into the deep love and life-giving hope, until we can be with him in heaven, and all our disappointments, all of our questions and doubts are healed, and our desires are fulfilled.